everyone, I'm Alana. Welcome to IGN Live here at E3 2017. Today, I am joined by Joe Madureira, who is the creative director on Battle Chasers Nightwar. And we actually have Reinhardt, who's playing it for us right now, so you guys can actually see some gameplay demo. So, in briefest terms, for anyone who doesn't know what Battle Chasers is, who hasn't read any of the comics, how would you describe it?
Battle Chasers is a pretty classic dungeon crawler. You know, there's a town with merchants and NPCs, and outside of that town, there's a world map with dynamic elements that randomly spawn. Time passes, so creatures on the roads might disappear. It might spawn resource nodes, story events, things like that. And then when you get to the dungeons, they randomly generate. They're different each time you play through them, from the room layouts to the loot and creatures that spawn inside of them. And so it's really just about getting more and more powerful, tackling harder dungeons, killing rare bosses. And you know, the cool thing about it is that the exploration part of it is a little more action-y. It's like top-down, like isometric. There's a lot of interaction with the environments and the enemies, though. You don't just randomly get attacked as you're walking around. So there's traps, there are puzzles. Creatures have their own dungeon abilities. Each hero has exploration abilities outside of combat. So it's a lot of fun just moving around. And then in combat,
Looks really pretty.
it's a turn-based. Oh, thank you. It's a turn-based combat system, and that's where a lot of the JRPG comparisons have come in. But it really is more of a dungeon crawler with lots and lots of RPG and JRPG elements and influences. Yeah, and it's party-based combat. There's 6 playable heroes. You can only ever have 3 in your combat party. And even just your party makeup is interesting to play with. It changes your strategy in the dungeons.
What are we going to be seeing in terms of story?
The story is a little more high level. Basically, the story revolves around Gully, who is a young girl. She has superhuman strength. She's kind of like the Hulk trapped in a kid's body. And that's thanks to her father's gauntlets. Her father was a legendary hero. He's gone missing. And so she wants to follow in his footsteps, and she thinks she's a hero like him, and everyone else is concerned about her, but she doesn't realize she's a kid. And so she's attracted some of her father's loyal followers, like Garrison's a swordsman that's fallen on hard times, but he comes back to help her. We have the giant robot Calibretto that befriends her early on. She's kind of like his big teddy bear, though, because as she says early on in the game, you break easier than I do. So you don't need to worry about me. She's actually the tank. Garrison deals DPS damage. Calibretto is kind of like a hybrid. He's got awesome... His fist can turn into a gun, okay? But he's also the healer of the party early on.
Awesome.
And so they get shot down and trapped on this island while they're looking for this mana source. Mana's drying up in their world, and so magic is sort of fading. And they immediately get shot down by bandits. And first they just want to get off the island, but they kind of get involved in the story of Alaman, who is a devil hunter, and he's on this island to stop the return of a vampire lord. He's raising an army to, do bad things.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, you kind of get roped into just sticking around and helping him kill this guy. And a lot of it just, a lot of the story we chose to let players opt in. There's lots of lore. You can spend hours reading all this stuff, but if you're not into that, you can just kill all the bosses and get to the end.
Right into combat?
Yeah.
So this was actually a Kickstarter success. What was your experience like with crowdfunding?
It was so awesome. I mean, I can honestly say we could not have made this game if it wasn't for Kickstarter. A lot of games on Kickstarter are games that maybe would not be super sexy to a publisher. We're doing turn-based combat. People are still like, why are you doing turn-based combat? It does have sort of an old school vibe to it, and so when you go into a publisher meeting with a pitch document, it's not going to happen. So Kickstarter definitely, the support from the fans and just got us to this point where we had a really awesome playable chunk of the game, and that did spawn some interest from publishers like THQ Nordic. They helped us make the game bigger and add a lot of new features. But if it wasn't for Kickstarter, we wouldn't have this game. So yeah, it was awesome.
That's amazing. So obviously a lot of people know you from, you've worked on tons of comic books, but also from the Darksiders franchise.
Yes.
So is there anything that you've learned from working on Darksiders 1 and 2 that you've translated into Battle Chasers?
Yeah, we still have a couple of guys that worked with us at Vigil on Darksiders, and of course, that love of building dungeons and creating awesome characters and monsters has definitely spilled over. I think that's what led to a lot of the dungeon interaction and just like puzzles and just the way that the dungeons feel. Definitely is stuff that we've learned over the years on the Darksiders games. So yeah, it's similarly to how Darksiders was like a love letter to Zelda. This is kind of our love letter to RPGs
That's
of
awesome.
old.
So in terms of difficulty, how easy do you think it is going to be for people who maybe haven't played any JRPGs to pick this game up?
It's, early on we were toying with the idea of making like ridiculously hard, but we've settled on a system where you can actually choose the level of difficulty for the dungeon. And so someone that's just coming at it, it's actually pretty approachable. If you play it at the normal difficulty, and you can try it anytime. You can try it on heroic and fail and then go, you know what, I'm gonna try normal.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so he's doing a battle burst.
Oh, cool.
And so just wrapping up on the dungeon difficulty,
Yes.
when you choose the difficulty level, it changes variables like how many rooms spawn, how difficult the monsters are, how much damage traps do.
Oh, interesting.
But also the loot rewards are guaranteed to be better. You'll get heroic or above loot, legendary loot, But to play it on the hardest difficulty, you have to have mastered all the systems, upgrading your loot via the crafting system, which we have a pretty robust crafting system, and it requires you to make the most powerful items in the game are crafted. As you will find a ton of them in the dungeons.
Yeah, so what can you tell us about crafting? How in-depth does that get?
Crafting?
Yeah.
It's pretty in-depth. I mean, you can, there's several stages to it, because you can craft rare and legendary items, but we can also, there's certain items that you can like just quest for or are rare drops that you can also add to the recipe, if you will, that will actually imbue the weapon with like some extra bonuses and stuff. So when you actually open the crafting system, we're not showing it today, but you can actually see the chance of success for the current item you're making, but also if you dump a ton of extra ingredients into it, it'll actually increase the chance of making a rare or legendary item. And you can actually put enough junk into it that it'll guarantee that you'll get the purple legendary item if you want. Because, a lot of times you're carrying around like 300 iron ingots and all this junk, so you might as well just like put it, So if it requires like 10 and you put in like 20, it'll just increase the chance you'll make something better. So it's kind of a fun system. It's real easy to use. I'm not a huge crafter myself in games. I like to just get the weapon off the monster and go. But it's actually been pretty fun to play around with it.
That's a good way to lead into my next question is, what's the thing that you're most excited about for Battle Chasers Nightwar, or the one thing you like the most about it?
The combat system turned out to be really fun. We actually have added this feature called Overcharge. Most of the combat revolves around
overcharges, I think.
Yeah. So the combat revolves around this turn order, and you can see it on the left side. It shuffles around based on what the creatures are doing, what abilities the heroes have selected. It'll show you, and there's a lot of strategy that comes into your placement on that time bar. You might have a cool attack, but it's not going to go off in time before the other, the enemy gets to go. And if you do your instant attacks, it generates overcharge. And overcharge is basically free mana that we give you just for that fight. Because a lot of times people will play very defensively, and they're like just doing basic attack. They don't want to like spend any mana during the fight. So we're basically like, hey, here's free mana. If you don't use it, it goes away. You're going to lose it after the battle anyway.
Right.
And it encourages you to try a lot of their abilities. The heroes gain abilities every 2 levels, so eventually like your combat choices get, like there's so much stuff you can do, and so it's fun to play around, especially when you have certain characters in your party together. You can there's like synergies that you can kind of play off of. And so that's a lot of fun. And then there's a little burst meter on the left-hand side that charges throughout combat, whether you're dealing damage or receiving damage. And that carries over from battle to battle. So you can hold on to it, and all the heroes have access to it. It's just shared resource across all 3 heroes. So that's kind of fun, too, like deciding who uses it and how much of it. Do I use all 3 with Garrison, or do I save some so Gully can do hers?
Yeah.
That's like a fun little side thing, too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we were actually playing on the Nintendo Switch here. What platforms is it coming to, and when's it coming out?
So we just announced a release date, October 3rd, and it's coming out on the PS1, Xbox 4, Nintendo Switch, and of course on the PC.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us, Joe.
Thank you.
For more at E3 2017, stay right here on IGN.